Everyone in the background is saying, is he dead? Nolan, wake the up.
Claiming they're sinking and calling for help. And yet in the background, are we really hearing all of this other activity?
Nobody has ever, none of the kids on this boat have ever admitted that anybody said that they thought Nolan was dead.
Something doesn't add up. A 19-year-old athlete disappears on the 4th of July at one of the most crowded beach gatherings in Mississippi history. And the last documented audio from the boat he supposedly wasn't on includes voices in the background saying words that sound, to a lot of ears, like his name. First, there is the distress call itself, released by the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, in which background voices appear to say things that multiple analysts and viewers have interpreted as references to Nolan Wells, even as the people on that boat maintain he was never there. Second, there is the question of the autopsy, specifically why the first medical examiner removed the throat and neck organs, a step that is documented and on record, and what that decision tells us about what investigators were actually looking for. Third, there is a second independent autopsy, commissioned separately, that examined markings on the back of Nolan's head and concluded on the record that the findings were pending further investigation, not resolved, not explained, pending. And fourth, there is the question almost no coverage has properly addressed, which is what the GPS coordinates from that distress call actually tell us about where the boat was when those background voices were recorded. What this case needs is not more noise. It needs documented facts separated from theory. That is what we are here to do today. Let's start with what is actually verified. Nolan Wells, a 19-year-old described in local reporting as a standout athlete from Ocean Springs, Mississippi, disappeared on July 4th during a gathering at Horn Island, a barrier island accessible only by boat in the Gulf of Mexico off the Mississippi coast. He never returned home. His body was recovered from the water days later. The official cause of death, as documented in the initial autopsy conducted by the Mississippi State Medical Examiner's Office, was drowning. That is what the documented record says at the baseline level. What the documented record does not cleanly settle is how he entered the water, whether anyone was with him when he did, and what the background audio from the CTOW distress call, obtained and released by the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, actually contains. That call is real. It was not released by a media outlet first. It was released by a state agency and then picked up and, in many cases, edited, enhanced, and re-uploaded by various media platforms and individual users. This distinction matters enormously, and it is one of the first places where myths started moving faster than documented fact in this case. What you hear in the clean, original version is a caller reporting that the bilge pump on their boat has failed, that the boat is taking on water at Horn Island, and that they need assistance.
Detail assistance, Vicky speaking. How can I help you?
Hey, we're at the west tip of Horn, and our bilge pump stopped working. We're sinking. Can y'all please come? We have a membership.
All right, of course. How far is the water coming up, sir? Can you give me a description? Ankles?
What'd
Hello?
you say? Hey.
Yes. How far is the water coming up, sir?
It's coming up. We're just sinking. I don't know. Like we're going down now.
All right. Well, let's get you going. Membership number or phone number listed on that account, sir.
I don't know the phone number. It's either. I think it's. Try that.
All right.
I know we have a membership, like guaranteed. I don't
All
have
right.
the tag
Unless
on
you
here.
have a
It got ripped
membership
off.
number or anything, it's okay. I'll get you over to the captain. What's the best phone number to reach you at?
What some listeners hear in the background of that call, beneath the main conversation, are voices that sound like the name Nolan, phrases that sound like questions about whether someone is alive, and at least one phrase that sounds like a desperate instruction. Here is what the documented record can and cannot tell us about that audio.
Experts, but back to Brandon Tatum, former police officer, Tucson PD. He is the star of the Officer Tatum on YouTube. He has interviewed Nolan's friends. Okay, you're saying that I am looking at, and others are looking at this out of context. My mind is open. You may be right. And I believe, Officer Tatum, you are specifically referring to the words. Let's see the transcript of the audio as I read this, please. You're referring to alleged statements. Sure he's dead? Is he dead? Nolan. OMG. Nolan, don't die. Then wake the F up. I thought he was on the check his chest.
Multiple forensic audio analysts who reviewed versions of this call noted publicly that the audio circulating online had been processed, filtered, and in some cases had additional seconds that did not appear in other versions. One digital forensics expert with documented law enforcement credentials stated on record that the version most people heard had been, quote, stepped on multiple times, meaning each copy and re-upload degrades and potentially alters the original. This is not a fringe concern. It is a standard problem in audio evidence handling, and it is documented. The Mississippi Department of Marine Resources released the original. Everything derived from that original is a copy of a copy. And some of those copies have been run through AI enhancement tools that, as one investigative reporter with documented technical background explained, insert interpretive decisions into the audio, meaning the tool fills in gaps based on probability, not certainty. That is a critical distinction that most viral coverage of this audio completely skipped over.
What we did, Nancy, is we used an old school technique to bring out the audio in the background. You know, you have AI enhancements now that are, you just cannot trust the AI because it inserts its own thoughts into it, you know. But when you do, when you go old school on this, you isolate and filter. You use an EQ, equalization, to filter, to cut out the low rumble below 80 hertz. You cut out the high hiss above 8 hertz. This gives you the chance to hear that background a little more clearly. Then you boost the mid-range frequency. That's between 300 hertz and 3400 hertz. That matches the mid-range of human speech. Then you apply a simple high-pass filter that removes the constant deep humming or any other extraneous noises that are constant. And this does not alter the content, it merely enhances the content. So when you ask, did we edit or alter? No, we merely enhanced it using basic tools that are used in every production.
This is the first place this case became a media literacy problem as much as an investigative one.
And so we have this expectation bias that's there. So the audio obviously is real. It's been released, and the agency that released it said that it's a video or audio of the incident, but every version that we've seen has been stepped on multiple times. And so there's an expectation bias when you start putting up audio translations that you believe is there, and everybody then has this confirmation of that this is what's said. Now, we have to go back to the original audio from the government agency to get the information that we need to prove what's there in the audio, because multiple pieces released through press stations online don't always have the exact audio we want. There's already been speculation that some of the different audio, like TMZ's and the others, are a little bit edited, and they always are, because you put them on there for a specific purpose. And adding the edited versions of what you think are the audio does not necessarily mean that that's what it is. We can look at the audio and find out what's there, but we've got to look at the original version.
Now here is the pivot that a lot of coverage got wrong, and it is worth pausing on. The most widely shared assumption in online discussion of this case was that if the background voices on that distress call are saying Nolan's name, that proves he was on the boat when it left Horn Island. But that conclusion does not logically follow even if the audio interpretation is correct, and the audio interpretation itself remains disputed.
Well, Nancy, thank you so much for having me on. If you put the audio within context, it is an impossibility, unless these people are prophesying that somehow they're saying Nolan's name or projecting that Nolan is somehow injured, hurt, or killed, because we have witnesses that have come out. When I interviewed Warren, a lot of those kids that I talked to already alluded to this, way before the audio came out, that they were gone. And people had already saw Nolan after they had left. The young lady, Katie, that he was hanging out with, I saw a text message from her alluding to the fact that she never saw him get on that boat at all. We have video of the boat that we shared on our social media page, and it shows all the occupants on the boat, and Nolan was not there. And so if a person thinks that they've heard something on the audio, they have to compare it with context. Maybe they said, "Is it dead?" talking about items that could potentially have died or damaged on the boat, given the fact that they were sinking. So I think people need to put this in context and reevaluate what they're listening to on the video, because if you are going to make a staunch stance in the wrong direction, in my opinion, by saying they're obviously talking about Nolan, it is incredibly impossible. One more thing real quick, that when you look at where they were at when they made the phone call and their GPS coordinates, it literally put them on the island. And we know, and not on the physical island, but really close proximity to the island. And we know, because we have another video of Nolan being out there and also all the other boats surrounding him, that this would have had to happen very near to hundreds of people in hundreds of different boats. So somebody would have seen something if there was a...
Here is why. The GPS coordinates associated with the distress call, which were part of the official documentation, placed the vessel in close proximity to Horn Island at the time of the call, not in open water far from the island. If the boat was still near the island when that call was made, then the presence of Nolan's name in the background, even if accurately interpreted, does not tell you whether he was on the boat, in the water near the boat, or still on the island. That geographic detail is underexplored in almost every major piece of coverage this case generated, and it fundamentally changes how you read the audio. You cannot interpret the voices without knowing where the boat was, and what we know from the documented record is that it was close to where hundreds of people were gathered.
Tupac, that just comes off the top of my head. Crimes happen all the time in a crowded area, and nobody sees anything. Either they say they didn't see anything, or they really didn't see anything, because it all blends in, right? It all blends in. I've had a little boy thrown off the 3rd level of the Mall of America almost to his death. He did die, and he was brought back to life. Nobody saw what happened. A guy threw him over. People were all over the mall. The food court was crowded. Nobody saw. I had like 2 witnesses. So I think part of it is, Mobley, you don't expect to see something, and so your mind is not interpreting, it's not intercepting what you're physically seeing. And again, we don't know what happened. We don't know why Nolan Wells has a red mark on the back of his occipital. We don't know. Was he hit? Did he fall? Then fall off a boat? It could have been any number of things. Some nefarious, some an accident, some negligent. My point is, just because there's a lot of people around, that does not guarantee you witnesses.
Multiple witnesses, documented in reporting, stated they saw Nolan Wells on Horn Island after the time the boat's friends group is documented to have departed.
Yeah, no, witnesses saw him on the island after the call. After the boys had left around 4:30, witnesses have seen Nolan alive on the island after that. So, you know, that puts Nolan alive after that. And I think that people should be focused on, okay, now let's interview and talk to people and consider what did they see, because we're already past the point of Warren and Wyatt's boat and all of those.
Those witness accounts have not been officially discredited.
Well, I think that if you are convinced without context that they are talking about Nolan, you're going to hear certain things and perceive it. I mean, the bilge pump is damaged. They could have been saying, don't die, or is it dead, referring to the bilge pump or the bilge pump. And they could have been talking about a battery. They could have been saying no, and people think they said Nolan. The only reason that I deviate from the transcript is because there are witnesses that have said they've seen Nolan after the boys had already left and after the call was already made. And also, I put my detective mind on, when I look at the reasoning, but why would they be calling and giving GPS coordinates and talking to this dispatch for 8 minutes if their best friend whom I've spoke to these boys. They've shown me pictures. They were emotional about Nolan's death. I was there during the funeral, at least there with them when the funeral was going on, and they were devastated that they couldn't go to his funeral. I perceive that it doesn't make sense if they had killed their friend in a malicious way or he was dead, that they wouldn't just simply ask for help instead of trying to cover it up and calling for a tow and talking for 8 minutes. I mean, all of those things, plus the witnesses, it just doesn't add up. And I just wish people would be open-minded to saying, let me rewatch it and let me put it within context that Nolan cannot be on the boat because witnesses seen him afterwards.
They have also not been officially confirmed as definitive. They exist in the record as claimed observations, and the honest answer is that the evidentiary weight of those accounts has not been publicly resolved. The autopsy findings are where the documented record raises questions that deserve serious attention, not sensationalism. The first autopsy, conducted by the Mississippi State Medical Examiner, returned a cause of death of drowning. What is documented and on record is that during that autopsy, the medical examiner retained the organs of the neck, including the larynx, pharynx, and connected structures, as well as the lungs. This is documented fact.
And I have questioned multiple actual medical examiners, actual doctors that say that means something. Put him up again. In what world would the first medical examiner remove Nolan's throat if it did not have something probative about it, something that proves something? Did they remove his toe? No. His elbow? No. His eyeball? His nose? No. They took his throat. Do not tell me that a medical doctor, which you are not, took a throat out of this young man because it, means nothing? And then, you know what? I can't even hear you. Straight out to Joe Scott Morgan joining us, professor of forensics, death investigator. That second doctor did not highlight that in red for nothing. That doctor is not grabbing at straws, as Mobley said. I don't know why he's saying that.
No, you're right. He has purpose. We have purpose in everything that we do in the medical legal world. And so when you see this highlighted area, it's unique in the way he has diagrammed it here. He even demonstrates it that it has almost like margins to it. And, you know, that's what has left a big question for us, because it's not like it's diffuse all over the place where you've got these kind of spotty alignments. He's got a margin. It almost looks like a rectangle, doesn't it? Well, when we begin to see things like that, we think about patterns. And that's some of the questions that have yet to be answered. But what he does say in his relative to the second examination is that he did a multi-layered dissection. Now, this area had not been dissected by the ME's office in Mississippi. So what he's doing is he's going layer by layer. We're talking about the skin. We're talking about the subcu fat. We're talking about the musculature that's under there. And yes, there is musculature under there. And what his conclusion is, Nancy, is that there's significant decomposition at this point in time. So he cannot make a determination about these markings one way or another. He needs more information. And admittedly, in this second autopsy,
a second independent autopsy was commissioned and conducted by a separate forensic pathologist. That pathologist documented markings on the posterior skull, described them in terms suggesting a defined margin rather than diffuse bruising, performed a multi-layer dissection of the area, and concluded in documented findings that due to the degree of decomposition present, a definitive determination about the origin of those markings could not be made at that time. The findings were recorded as pending further investigation. That phrase, pending further investigation, is not a finding of foul play. It is also not a finding of accidental death. It is an honest statement of evidentiary limitation, and the distinction matters. Here is an open question the documented record does not resolve, and it is one worth sitting with genuinely. If the markings on the back of Nolan Wells' head originated before he entered the water, what caused them? If they originated after he entered the water, from contact with the seafloor, with debris, or from the process of body recovery, Why did the second forensic pathologist find them significant enough to document with specificity? The documented second autopsy exists. Its conclusions remain, on the record, unresolved. What do you make of that distinction? Share your read in the comments, because this is a genuine interpretive gap in what is publicly known. Here is something almost no coverage has centered, and it is documented. The Sea Tau distress call included a specific exchange in which the dispatcher asked whether the United States Coast Guard was needed. The caller said no. That response has been discussed almost entirely in terms of what it might suggest about who was on the boat, and why they declined federal assistance. What has not been adequately examined is the documented timeline between that call and when Nolan Wells was reported missing. The gap between those two events, who made the missing persons report, when it was made, and what information was provided at that time, is part of the official record and has not received proportionate scrutiny compared to the audio analysis that dominated coverage.
Guys, they panic. They think it's their fault, whether it is or it isn't. They get rid of the body. They lie. They do all sorts of things. The cover-up is very often worse than what the initial incident was. People panic. So the reaction of the friends to Nolan potentially having passed, that reaction doesn't mean that much to me, because you don't know what somebody's going to do under those circumstances. So hearing them on the boat, I hear what Tatum is saying, and it's reasonable. But how people act in that scenario is not always reasonable.
The documented fact is that cases like this, where a young person disappears at a crowded outdoor event, are notoriously difficult to reconstruct precisely because no one is paying attention to any one individual in a crowd of that size. That is not a theory. It is consistent with documented patterns in missing persons cases at large public gatherings. And it is worth remembering when evaluating claims about what witnesses did or did not see. What remains on record, unresolved, and worth following is this. The second autopsy's findings are, as documented, pending further investigation. That investigation, whatever form it takes, has not produced publicly available final conclusions as of the documented reporting on this case. The question of what the background audio contains, analyzed using properly authenticated chain of custody-preserved original files rather than processed copies, has not been publicly answered with the kind of forensic documentation that would meet evidentiary standards.
I look at evidence is it possible to authenticate the evidence, the information that's being provided? Think about when you download software from a website. Many websites give you a value next to that file because they want you to know that what you're downloading can be kind of authenticated or validated. When we're receiving audio like this from the source, it would be good and proper if people are going to start looking at this and doing examinations to actually apply some kind of hash value or some kind of way to uniquely identify this particular file as an original so people can validate what they're looking at. Number two, I would also want to look at, what tools people have used, if anything, to basically either analyze or enhance. Now, anybody can use any tools out there, but are they using a tool that's forensically sound, that's defensible, that passes the Fry standard in terms of the methodology?
Okay, you got to speak English to me, man. Are you saying
Yes.
that what Dave Mack's team did is acceptable?
So my whole thing is no documentation, no evidence. What did Dave Mack's team specifically do? Did they write down those steps that anybody can reproduce what they did? And if we can reproduce it,
Yes, they did.
In a process and share that, then that's great. I'm seeing a lot of versions of these videos online with redactions, with phone numbers being withheld.
Put him up,
with
please. Put him up. What videos? Because I'm specifically referring to the audio. I've seen all those videos. They're AI. They're not real. I've seen a video of a young man face down on the beach being attacked by a horde of people. That's not Nolan. That's from a different date. I'm speaking specifically about the audio that Tatum is referring to.
Yes. So with that, one of the specific aspects of that is authenticating, again, where it was received. Is there a digital fingerprint associated with that particular audio? What tools were used, and what specific enhancements were done where to bring out that specific those specific segments that were enhanced.
And the witness accounts placing Nolan Wells on Horn Island after his friends departed have not been formally reconciled with the physical evidence of where and how his body was recovered. Those are not manufactured cliffhangers. Those are the actual open threads in the documented record. The viral call has a dark twist, and the twist is this.
What?
Do you need the United States Coast Guard?
No, we do not need that.
Is it real? Is it altered? Is it probative? Does it prove anything? Is it a bombshell? If you know or think you know anything about the death of this young star athlete, Nolan Wells, please dial 228-769-3063.
The most disturbing thing about the audio may not be what it contains. It may be how quickly everyone decided they already knew. If you have followed this case and you believe the documented record points in a direction that deserves more attention, put your read in the comments below. And if you want the deep dive on the second autopsy findings and what forensic pathologists have documented about cases involving similar ambiguous markings, that is where we are going next.